I think something was with the car made this completely unrunnable. Suddenly it was qualifying, jumping on high speed on the rear suddenly.
Max Verstappen, eliminated in Q2, at Suzuka. Let that sink in. The same driver who dominated this track for years, suddenly couldn't even make the top 10. And what he said on the radio right after, changed everything. Because this wasn't frustration. This was something much worse. A 4-time world champion, admitting he cannot trust his own car. Not in slow corners. Not in fast corners. Nowhere. And here's the part nobody is talking about yet. He was beaten by a rookie. Same team. Same conditions. Completely different result. So what is really happening inside Red Bull right now? How do you go from total dominance to losing over a full second per lap? And why are engineers quietly admitting they don't fully understand the car? Because by the end of this video, you'll realize this is not just a bad qualifying. This is the moment everything started to fall apart. Subscribe now, because the final detail explains everything. It starts with something that, at first, doesn't look dramatic. A practice session. Final practice before qualifying. The moment where teams usually fine-tune the car, lock in the setup, and prepare for that one lap that defines everything. But for Red Bull, this session exposed a crack. A small one. Easy to ignore, if you're not paying attention. Verstappen finishes outside the top group. More than a second off the pace. Not tenths. Not a small gap. A full second. And in modern Formula 1, that's enormous. That's the difference between fighting for pole and barely surviving Q1. But here's where things get interesting. Because inside the garage, they weren't panicking yet. They believed they knew the problem. Oversteer. Too much rotation. The rear of the car stepping out, especially in high-speed sections. Unstable, but fixable. So overnight, they made changes. Aggressive changes. The kind of changes you make when you think you're close to the solution. And this is where everything begins to go wrong. Because instead of fixing the issue, they flipped it. Completely. The car went from oversteer to understeer. From too loose to completely unwilling to turn. And that might sound like progress. But it's not. Because now the driver loses something even more important than balance. He loses confidence. And without confidence, Suzuka becomes one of the hardest tracks in the world. Especially Sector 2. Fast direction changes. No room for hesitation. No margin for doubt. You either commit or you lose everything. And Verstappen couldn't commit. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is what this behavior reveals. Because when a car swings this violently between two extremes, it means something deeper is broken. It means the setup is not the issue. It means the understanding is the issue. Even Red Bull admitted it later. The car is operating in a very narrow window. A tiny operating range where everything works. Step outside that window, even slightly, and the entire balance collapses. And that's exactly what happened. Every change they made pushed the car out of that window. And suddenly, nothing made sense anymore. The rear feels disconnected. The front doesn't respond. The car reacts differently, corner after corner. Unpredictable. And for a driver like Verstappen, that's the worst possible scenario. Because his entire driving style depends on precision. On knowing exactly how the car will behave, before it even does it. Take that away. And you don't just lose lap time. You lose control. But here's where this story takes a turn nobody expected. Because while Verstappen is fighting the car, someone else is quietly figuring it out. And what he does next makes the situation inside Red Bull even more uncomfortable. And this is where everything shifts. Because while Verstappen is fighting the car, adjusting, correcting, hesitating, his teammate does the opposite. No overdriving. No forcing the limits. Just adapting. A rookie. No history with dominant Red Bulls. No reference of how the car should feel. And that changes everything. Because he's not trying to drive the RB21. He's driving the RB22, exactly as it is. And suddenly, it works. Not perfectly. Not comfortably. But enough. Enough to make it into Q3. Enough to beat Verstappen. And that creates a situation Red Bull cannot ignore. Same team. Different result. So now the question becomes unavoidable. Is the car difficult? Or is it selective? Because the data reveals something subtle, but critical. The rookie's setup was slightly different. A bit more rotation. A bit more risk on entry. A car that moves more, but responds quicker. And at Suzuka, that matters. Because if you can trust the front, even slightly, you can commit. And commitment at Suzuka is everything. But Verstappen's car didn't allow that. It sat in between. Not stable enough to trust. Not sharp enough to attack. The worst possible balance. And this is where things get uncomfortable inside the team. Because for years, Red Bull built cars around Verstappen. Sharp front end, loose rear, maximum rotation. A car that rewards precision and punishes hesitation. But this car doesn't behave like that. And now, for the first time, Verstappen is the one adapting, not the car. And that's a completely different situation. Because when a driver of his level starts questioning the car, it's not just feedback. It's a signal. A very serious one. And internally, Red Bull already knows it. They admitted they are missing performance. A lot of performance. And more importantly, they don't fully understand why. Think about that. The most dominant team of the last era? Now searching for answers. Testing ideas. Guessing directions. And every guess carries risk. Because while they experiment, their rivals are not waiting. They are executing. Improving. Extending the gap. And Red Bull is reacting. But here's the part most people still don't see. This isn't just about one qualifying session. This isn't just about Suzuka. This is about a concept. A design philosophy that might not be working. Because underneath all of this, there is a deeper issue. One that explains everything Verstappen is feeling in the car. And once you understand it, that radio message stops sounding like frustration and starts sounding like a warning. And here's the part that turns this from a bad weekend into a serious problem. Because what Verstappen is feeling in the car is not random. It's not just balance. It's not just setup. It's aerodynamic sensitivity. And that changes everything. Because this kind of issue doesn't show up the same way every lap. It changes with speed, with wind, with track temperature, with tire condition. One lap feels acceptable. The next, completely different. And that's exactly what Verstappen described without saying it directly. A car that moves. A car that shifts underneath him. A car that cannot be trusted in high-speed corners. And Suzuka exposes that more than any other track. Especially through Sector 2. Fast, flowing, relentless. There's no time to think. No time to correct. You either trust the car instantly, or you lose tenths in every corner. And Verstappen was losing them everywhere. But here's where the technical reality becomes brutal. Because this issue is coming from the floor. The most important part of these cars. The part that generates the majority of the downforce. And when the floor doesn't behave consistently, the entire car becomes unstable. Not visibly, but mechanically, aerodynamically, and most importantly, predictively. Which means the driver cannot anticipate what happens next. And at 300 kilometers per hour, that's everything. But it gets worse. Because this kind of problem creates something engineers fear. A very narrow operating window. A tiny sweet spot where the car actually works. And outside of that, performance disappears instantly. So every setup change becomes a gamble. Too aggressive, you lose the rear. Too safe, you lose the front. Too low, instability. Too high, no downforce. There is no safe zone. Only a perfect zone. And right now, Red Bull can't find it consistently. That's why the car looks different every session. That's why one driver can make it work and the other can't. That's why Verstappen sounds calm, but defeated. Because deep down, he understands something crucial. This is not a quick fix. This is not something you solve overnight. This could take weeks, maybe longer. Because if the issue is embedded in the floor design, then you're not adjusting the car. You're redesigning it. And that takes time. Wind tunnel time. Simulation time. Production time. And while all of that happens, the season keeps moving. Points keep disappearing. The gap keeps growing. And Red Bull already has an internal estimate. Around 1 second per lap to the leaders. 1 second. In Formula 1, that's massive. That's the difference between controlling the race and watching it from the midfield. And suddenly, everything starts to make sense. The failed setup changes. The inconsistent balance. The calm but devastating radio message. The rookie outperforming the champion. It's all connected. But we're still missing one final piece. Because there's a moment, after qualifying, that says more than any data. More than any telemetry. More than any technical explanation. A moment that reveals exactly where Verstappen stands right now. And once you see it, you understand why this could be the beginning of something much bigger. And then, comes the moment that no one can measure with data. No lap time. No telemetry. No numbers. Just behavior. Verstappen pulls into the pit lane. Engine off. Silence. No immediate feedback. No long discussion over the radio. No visible frustration. And that's what makes it so unusual. Because when things go wrong, drivers react. They question. They push. They demand answers. But this time, he doesn't. He steps out of the car. Removes the helmet. and walks away. Straight to the motorhome. No eye contact. No urgency. Nothing. And inside the paddock, people notice. Because this is not anger. This is acceptance. And in Formula One, acceptance is dangerous. Because it means the driver already understands something the team is still trying to figure out. It means he knows this is not about one lap. Not about traffic. Not about timing. It's bigger. Much bigger. And when he finally speaks, the words confirm it. Simple. Direct. Cold. The car moves in a way I can't trust. I can't attack anywhere. No excuses. No hidden optimism. Just reality. And then, the most important line. Even with a perfect lap, it wouldn't change anything. Think about that again. Perfection changes nothing. That's not a driver searching for answers. That's a driver who already found them. And doesn't like what he sees. Because if the limit of the car is position 11, then the problem is not performance on the edge. It's the edge itself. It doesn't exist anymore. And suddenly, everything connects. The instability. The narrow window. The failed setup direction. The internal confusion. The 1 second gap. All of it leads to this moment. A driver who dominated Formula One, now unable to extract more from the machine beneath him. But here's where this becomes something even bigger than Red Bull. Because Formula One doesn't wait. There is no pause. No reset button. While Red Bull searches for solutions, Mercedes is executing. McLaren is improving. Every weekend, points are scored. Gaps increase. Pressure builds. And Verstappen is stuck in the middle of it. Not because he lacks speed, but because he lacks the tool. And history shows something very clear. When a team loses understanding of its car, recovery is never instant. Sometimes it takes races. Sometimes half a season. Sometimes longer. And by the time you fix it, the championship is already gone. So now, everything comes down to one question. Not whether Red Bull can fix the car, but when. Because if that answer comes too late, then this moment at Suzuka? Position 11. That calm, controlled radio message. That silent walk back to the motorhome. Won't just be remembered as a bad qualifying. It will be remembered as the exact moment. The dominance ended.